tonight's special meeting of the Board of Finance on this Tuesday, March 2nd, 2021. I'd like to call to order the meeting, and please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you for that. You'll see that on the agenda, we have two items tonight. We have the Board of Selectmen presenting its proposal for the fiscal year 22 budget. And the second item is that the Board of Finance will begin its deliberation of that proposal. Just to give folks a heads up as to how this meeting may go, or hopefully is intended to go. Matt, I believe, will present on the board, on behalf of the Board of Selectmen, the proposal that the board came to last week. After that proposal is finished, we'll begin our deliberation. We'll begin our deliberation by perhaps asking Bob and Brad to provide the key metrics of that proposal, things like the increase in spending and perhaps the increase in the mill rate. We'll perhaps inquire as to whether or not there are any updates that Bob, Brad, and perhaps Terry can provide us on the items that tend to break late in the process, things like grants and or insurance. After that, I'd like to survey the Board of Finance members to get their kind of initial thoughts on the presentation, the proposal. Not necessarily go into detail, but just the conceptual thoughts of where they are on the proposal. And then we'll begin to go into the departments one at a time and do the deep dive review. In prior years, we've not been able to get to departments this night. The Board of Selectmen proposal has gone on for the entire meeting. What we're thinking tonight is that it might be a little bit briefer, and so we will, our hope is to begin the department by department presentation, or excuse me, deliberation tonight. We'll go, maybe halfway through that list, time permitting. And then, Dion, are we recessing to Thursday, or are we adjourning to Thursday?
I have an agenda for a meeting for Thursday. So if you just want to adjourn, we can,
Okay.
Yeah.
It's your choice. You can do it either way.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's just the overview for folks in the public coming to the meeting, just, an overview of what we're thinking tonight might go like. So at this point, I will hand it over to Matt on behalf of the Board of Selectmen to present the Board of Selectmen's proposal.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. It's good to be with you tonight. I was thinking today as I prepared this PowerPoint, how different it is this year. So many things have changed. I remember on this exact day last year, we sat together in meeting room A, and I did the presentation, and I think I had a fever of 103 and was later diagnosed with severe flu. It might have been something else, but because there were no COVID tests in the state of Connecticut at that time. The rest of the deliberations I watched from a prone position online on my couch for the next 2 days. So it'd be better if we were together in one room, but at least I'm lucid tonight. So that's a major improvement. So I'm going to spin through our budget proposal. I want to give you some background on this. We believe very strongly that a budget statement is a statement of the values and the goals of the community that we serve. It reflects the services that people expect and the services they need to enjoy their town to the fullest. And we have crafted a budget as best we can to meet those needs while being sensitive to the fact that some people in our community are not doing well. And there has been a solid year, 12 months of simply unprecedented disruption in our daily lives and many of our jobs and how we go about our work. And one of the things I want you to take away from this is that some of those impacts are actually reversed. In some cases, people are doing poorly. In many other cases, they're doing quite well. And the demands on town employees and school employees, as I'm sure you've heard in Dr. Carver's presentation, have actually gone up, in some cases quite significantly. So the strategy that we're employing is to make sure that we are providing services that our residents need. This is particularly critical with Park and Rec and with our schools. Parents need to work every day. They need to have someplace for their kids to go. They rely on these services that we provide for them. Essential services must be maintained when people go to work, when you need to get emergency vehicles around. We still have to have people out on the roads. We still have to have people in town hall doing the things that they do to make the town run and make it run efficiently. And as I mentioned, sometimes, and this is actually quite common when there are periods of severe economic distress, the need for public services actually goes up, not down. And sometimes that can mean a real crunch when needs go up and funding goes down. But in this case, as you'll see in a couple of minutes, that's not what we're seeing right now. We are seeing an increase in demand for services. What you see here is a picture I took last Saturday of COVID vaccine clinic number 5 that is run in our gorgeous new track and field training center. I can tell you we would not be able to run this clinic without that facility. So we're extremely grateful for the incredibly generous donation that allowed this thing to be constructed. But we have staff members like Laura Vasile, our health director, Tom Galliford, emergency management and fire marshal, Eileen Earl, who have been working literally 7 days a week on these programs, working after hours and recruiting volunteers. And many of the people you see here are volunteers from our school district and from town hall. They're unpaid to do this. They're volunteering along with other community members to make this COVID clinic work. And we have currently vaccinated about 75% of the 75 plus age group. And those are all the ones that will take it at this point. We've moved into the 65 plus, and I'm sure as you heard the governor's announcement last week and from my newsletter that we are now accepting 55 and up and moving through that group as soon as the vaccine supplies allow. So our strategy has been to craft a budget that is designed to protect those essential services and keep doing those things that we need to do for our community. There are no new programs planned. We're not looking for a turf field. We'd love to. We're not looking to expand any initiatives in town hall. We're trying our very best to keep this budget as low as possible, knowing that we have some challenges. And here's what those challenges look like. Rapid population growth, especially in the last 12 months. As of 2019, beginning of 2019, Bethel had grown by about 6.1% since the 2010 census. According to Department of Public Health figures, we don't have the 2020 official census data yet, but according to DPH, which tends to be pretty close, we now have just a hair under 20,000 residents in the town of Bethel, and that is up a full 7.0% since 2020. Obviously, global pandemic has changed the way we go about things. It's created many new costs and many new procedures that we've had to adapt to. This has created new workloads. Health department, as you saw from the presentations from our department heads, we are in severe need in that department. Not only do we just to keep up with the workload in the department on a regular basis is one thing, but add the demands of the COVID response, add the demands of all of the health complaints that go through there. And that really, I think a lot of people don't know what that really entails. Anything that goes on that has to do with property maintenance, with rental properties, those complaints often wind up in the health department. So when a resident calls up and says that there is an overflow an overflowing garbage dumpster behind a mall that is affecting them. They can smell it, they can see rats. Public health has to go deal with that. Anybody who's been a landlord knows that if a tenant has a problem that's not being corrected by the landlord, that complaint goes to the health department. The almost 100 restaurants that we have in town have to be inspected on an annual basis, and often more times than that. And many of these things are things that used to be done by the state health department. And in order to balance out their workload and handle their budget problems, they basically said to the towns in Connecticut, you have to do that now. So that's put more pressure on our department. So that is a factor that we're trying to address in this budget. Information technology is another thing that we're asking for. We have not changed that department in 10 years. In fact, just today, Dion and Nick Cataldo and I had a presentation from a company that we're trying to find a way to upgrade our website without any increase in cost, I might add, because our website has gotten stale and doesn't communicate with the public as well as we would like it. People they're used to, our residents are used to very sophisticated commercial sites that are easy to use, easy to find information, and that's not what we have today. We need to take a look at that. But more importantly, we also need to stay ahead of the concerns with cybersecurity. And after 10 years, it's time that we need to add a part-time person to help our one employee. And I know the Board of Ed has had similar challenges dealing with, over 3,100, 3,200 computers for kids. So there's a lot of pressure on that department. Then the police department, we took one police car away, but left one in out of the 4 that they asked for. And they are looking for one new officer. In negotiating with the department, they backed it off to hiring that officer in the back half of the year just to minimize the budget. But there's a little sensitivity about the issue of hiring police officers, but you have to look at the calls for service that our department gets and the workload that has gone up with things like cyber theft, identity theft, calls for petty larcenies, shoplifting. These things have increased over the years and has put a real strain on our department and has really loaded up the overtime as well. And then finally, new construction has really put a big load of pressure on the building department, the health department, and the land use department. And I'm going to show you some graphs in a minute that show you exactly what that looks like. And then, of course, the big elephant in the room is the Rockwell and Johnson renovation debt. The new debt from the school, not including the debt that was paid off by this Board of Finance and its very careful planning, which I commend you for, because we would be in much worse shape if you had not adopted that strategy a couple of years ago. But the new debt of 1.7 million coming on definitely is a major factor in our budget this year. And then, of course, increased demand in social services department and senior center departments. I want to commend Lisa Plum, the director of the senior center, and Megan Allworth-Kavadian for their work. They not only have really pulled out the stops and worked on an overtime basis just here in town hall, and even though they can't run programs, they're doing outreach, getting meals for seniors, reaching into the community, working with Brotherhood in Action to make sure that people who have been affected by this pandemic have what they need. And they've just done absolutely outstanding work. So let's take a look at Bethel's fiscal health. As I mentioned, one of the challenges that this Board of Finance faces is that not everybody is affected the same way. And I'm going to just kind of take you back on a little journey to 2008 when the big recession hit. And that recession had actually been building for about 1.5 years, and it finally hit the fan in October of 2008 when the subprime mortgage market crashed. That brought down some of the biggest investment firms, and that rippled through the entire economy. And even here in the town of Bethel, in 2009, there was an immediate reduction in the amount of tax revenue that was coming in because that crisis hit everybody kind of across the board. It really knocked the economy back for a pretty good period of time. Property values fell, layoffs absolutely skyrocketed, personal income lost ground. And the difference this time is that that is not happening across the board. What we see is an unemployment rate that is fluctuating. It popped up during the beginning part of the crisis, but then is now trending back down. We have a situation where strong retail sales in the state of Connecticut have actually taken what was projected to be about a $400 million deficit in the state of Connecticut for the fiscal year that we're in, fiscal year 21, and actually turn that into a surplus, which is remarkable. So while you have some people that have really been hit hard, others are doing a lot better. And so we're seeing this very divergent type of a situation. So what that means is for the people who have money, they're still doing what they need to do. They're still coming in for building permits. They still want to use our services. They still expect the schools to provide the same services they need. And you know, when you look at that, you get a very mixed picture of what the state of the economy looks like. And here's just a couple of headlines, just from the last couple of weeks to show you what that looks like. Walmart under pressure. They've actually been under pressure for years to raise wages, but this year they're going to raise wages. They're going to start moving up to the $15 an hour, regardless of what the federal government does. Some economists are saying that they're expecting wages to jump in the back half of 2021. And then finally, and there are many, many articles. I just pulled out a couple. Pew Charitable Trust estimate that the federal stimulus fueled personal incomes, that there was actually a slight increase in 2020, which goes against conventional wisdom. And there could be more depending on what happens with the Rescue America Act that is now pending in Congress and has already been passed by the House of Representatives and is now sitting in the Senate. Economic indicators, Bethel real estate sales are strong. Calendar year 2020 versus 2019 saw a 28% increase in units sold. The median selling price increased 13%. Now, of course, that doesn't mean the value of the homes increased that much. It just means that that was the range that those homes were selling in. But you can see that what the median price going up means is the real estate sales in the upper end of the market remain very strong in 2022. Residential construction is up. You will see the red trend line is a statistical linear regression that shows the number of building units that have been permitted in the town of Bethel since 2016. You can see that trend. At the same time, commercial construction is now rebounding. The same chart from 2016 to the end of 2020. Now, these numbers are smaller, of course, 4 units. You know, that looks like a steep curve. So it goes from 2 units to 4 units, but those are big projects. So, and that puts even more pressure on our building department. And of course, these numbers don't even include public projects like the 2 huge school renovations that put tremendous pressure on the building department and the fire marshal's office to stay ahead of that, because that's a very, very tight timeline. And here's what the unemployment trend looked like for the calendar year. So starting out from just under 4%, dipping down to 3.1, then at the height of the pandemic, when things were really ramping up with a lot of people getting sick, the unemployment jumped way up. Then you can see the effect of federal stimulus dollars coming in. The Paycheck Protection Program began to help that out. So you had a little blip up in November, but now it's beginning to drop down again. And we don't have final Labor Department numbers for January. We'll all be very interested to see what those look like. Grand list growth. This is a huge story. So Bethel continues to be a very, very desirable place to live. So even in the middle of the pandemic, construction not only did not fall off, but it increased. So we know about projects like the Summit and the Grand, the Grand and Bethel Crossing, those have been ongoing for several years now. But residential building from independent builders jumped up, home renovations and additions jumped up. So this has put, and there's still a lot more in the pipeline, but this produced very, very healthy growth in the grand list this year, which would again seem counterintuitive, but that's what happened. So to move into the budget, I'm going to take you through this budget in sections. So I'm not going to deal with the debt part of it just yet, because I want you to see that we've worked very hard to try to mitigate the impact of all these factors on our budget. So the town budget minus debt, minus school school maintenance, this is just town operating budget, is increasing in my proposal by almost $418,000. That represents a 1.58% increase in that budget. Of that number, wages and salaries, about more than 90% of it is contractual, makes up the bulk of that. And that does include the positions that I just mentioned. Half a year for sanitarian, half a year for police officer, and a part-time IT person is included in that number. The rest of that increase is some contracted services, police training increases to meet the police accountability bill, the police vehicles that we mentioned. There were approximately 7 departments in town hall that went down, 23 that went up. I mean, not departments, but departments in the budget, and then a few stayed the same. So with between the ones that went down and went up, the 73,196 covers those other items. So you can see the vast bulk of that number of the 417 is contractual increases. One thing I want to highlight, you're going to see when I get into the departments, when we get to Department 240, which is road construction. I wanted to call that out separately just to give you a heads up on it. As we have discussed for many years, and I know the Board of Finance veterans on here will remember, every year we talk about how we need to, over time, try to get this road construction budget up to just under $1 million. The target number that we heard from Bob Dibble and Eric Swenson is 975,000. If we can move that budget up to that point and then hold it there year after year without, a big increase, without showing a big bottom line increase in our budget submission each year, maybe just little adjustments here and there for inflation or price changes in materials, then we have a pretty good program where we can keep our roads in good shape without borrowing money. Just to give you a recap, starting in 2011, we started a very aggressive road reconstruction program. I'm sure the Board of Finance veterans remember that very well. I had proposed bonding the entire thing. The Board of Finance at that time did not approve that. They wanted instead to approve it in sections with each year, which worked out fine. So for a number of years, we borrowed we spent $2 to $2.5 million on roads to get caught up because there was a big deficit in our road plan or our road maintenance back in those days. So for about 3 or 4 years, we spent double the normal amount. But then as we shifted from borrowing to paying cash, budget pressures have pushed that down. So instead of getting closer to that goal of getting to 900,000 plus, we've actually gone backwards. Last year, the number that we had in the budget was 500,000. Bob and Brad and I and the department heads looked at trying to get that up to 900,000. That was just too big a jump when you see the other factors that we have to deal with this year. We looked at it at 700,000, and finally I decided that we have to keep that flat versus the prior year, which I frankly don't like. It's frankly not the right thing to do because we still have to deal with this issue and moving forward in the next few years, we still have to try to put more money in this account. But for this year, to meet the demands, which have quite frankly fallen off a little bit, I'm going to dedicate $664,000 of a LOSIP grant to fill in the gap so we can take care of those roads that you see on the screen in front of you. Some of you might live on some of those roads, but if you do, you know that you were, these roads, unfortunately, 10 years ago when we started the road reconstruction plan, they were still in pretty good shape. So they fell to the bottom of the list in terms of priority. Well, they're not on the bottom of the list of the priority anymore because they're 10 years older, they're more broken up. We get severe complaints. They're becoming more expensive to try to just keep the potholes filled in. They have to be done. So I'm going to be recommending the use of a LoCIP grant so we can keep that budget flat and still take care of the folks that live on those roads. Just so you know, LoCIP stands for Local Capital Improvement Program. It is a program where the state sets aside a certain amount of, I think it's sales tax funds that go back to towns on a prorated basis, and they carry over from year to year. So it's not usually a lot of, I think it's like 119,000 a year. It varies a little bit from year to year, but it rolls over. And then when you accumulate some, you can use it for a wide variety of things. But it must have, you can't use them for schools, but you can use it for any kind of capital need in town. Normally what we like to do with things like this is do something that's new, like build a new sidewalk in a neighborhood that doesn't have one, or put in a new park, something like that. Something that's really tangible for voters and taxpayers so they can see how that money is being used to benefit them. In this particular case, the Board of Selectmen feels that the wisest choice is to use this to get our roads caught up. And then we, again, moving forward, we still have to deal with how to get that back up to the right level. Another thing to point out is, and we know Dr. Carver and her team have done a great job of reminding the parents and the PTO organizations about this. The costs in the town side of the budget still contain a tremendous amount of money that benefits schools. And this is a breakdown of what those costs look like moving into 2022. And you can see, now this does have the debt line in it, but you can see that when you add in the debt line, this is an increase of almost $415,000. Town insurances went up a little bit. Liability went up a little bit due to the new schools. Workers' compensation went down. Benefits went up a very slight amount. Utilities somewhat went down. There was some savings there in electricity. But then the others are basically static. Accounting went up a little bit too, because that has to do with the size of the books that you're auditing. So this is what the summary looks like when you add all those things together. Town operating budget, 418,000, a 1.58% increase. Schools is, and this is exactly the same as Dr. Carver's presentation. We did not touch that. We feel very strongly that Dr. Carver and the board did the very best they could do in holding down the costs, considering the tremendous challenges they have and the teachers have in dealing with the pandemic and keeping kids in classrooms and keeping the right teachers in the right places with the population that's flowing through. We really just didn't see any way you can change that without hurting the kids and hurting the parents that need those kids to be in class. School maintenance, these are contracts, but we've been pushing that a little bit too hard too. There's a slight increase here, not a big deal, but the big factor that we're dealing with is the debt load, up 17% plus, and that leads to a total town of Bethel increase of 3.45%. Now let's just take a look at what that debt load really means, so you can see, you know, how hard everybody has tried to hold the line on these things as best we can. If you back out the school debt, this is what that budget would actually look like. And again, the debt line that you see here, this is theoretical, of course, this didn't happen. But because of the good work that the Board of Finance has done in the last few years, refinancing older debt and paying off older short-term debt, that debt line actually would have gone down by $887,000. And that would have led to a total budget increase of only 1.27%. So when you go through the deliberations, please keep in mind that this is, I hate to use a word that gets overused, but I'm going to call it that anyway. It is a status quo budget. It provides the services that we already have. It does ask for a little bit of help in terms of headcount on both the school side and the town side to keep doing those services, to keep performing those services the way we have been. But you can see that the big elephant is still the debt, and that's what we're asking our voters to look at that and say, yes, I voted for that. This is the school renovation that we signed up for. And now it's time to put that in the budget and deal with it properly without taking anything away from our citizens or our kids or schools or our town. Now, before I go through the departments, which won't really take too long, I'll do a department recap. I thought I'd pause here first and see if my colleagues on the Board of Finance have any initial questions based on what I've said so far. Yeah, Brian.
Matt, just a quick question. I know you said that you're looking to hire a part-timer in IT.
Correct.
Does that reduce contracted services in IT?
No, because contracted services in IT are leases on some of the servers, although most of them we buy, but it's mostly licensing. So it's software, applications. You gotta, it's worth it. That's a good question though, because when I first got here, I found out that half the Microsoft programs we were using were pirated, which you can't do. So these are licenses. So that's what the contracted services are.
All right, so we generally don't bring in outside IT people to assist.
No.
Okay.
We've been fully in-house for like 9 years now. And so Nick Cataldo is our full-time guy. He is backed up by Dave Airy, who heads up the IT unit for the schools, and we collaborate with the schools. When we've had an emergency, they've sent somebody over to work with Nick, and vice versa. Nick helps out with programming the Chromebooks before school starts in the fall. But no, we don't have any outside contractors coming in.
All right, thank you.
Yep. Cynthia.
Hi there.
Hi.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions just based on what you've presented so far.
Yeah.
For anyone who knows, this is a question. The $30 million in grand list growth, how much revenue is that equal to? If you could tell me. approximately.
Bob, can you answer that? Bob Kozlowski? You're muted.
Come on, there you go. It's in the area of about $1 million, roughly.
Okay. And the other question I have is that LoSiP grant. So did we get that a while ago, or is there more in there, or when and where?
The total amount in that LoSiP account is about 766,000 right now. And in the upcoming budget year for the state, we might get more. They don't decide what they're going to put into LoSiP until the tail end of the budget season, and they kind of see how much damage there is. So it's kind of hard to tell.
Does that amount include the 664 and change for the highway, or
No, you'd have to subtract the
Okay.
highway out of there, so there'd be a small balance left.
Okay, thanks.
Karen, yes, Karen Foster.
Do you know for sure that you're getting the 664,000 from LoSiP? Is that definite?
Yeah, LoSiP is,
Yeah.
I will say this about the state of Connecticut, they usually make things really hard. This is easy. They have a very defined list of things that you can use it for. And as long as your project, and roads is one of them, road construction is one of them. And as long as you have a resolution from the board, from the legislative body, representative body, in this case, the Board of Selectmen, and you certify that you are using the funds for that purpose. In fact, I think it's a reimbursement. So we actually have to go through and start the construction, and then we get reimbursed for it. But yeah, it's not one of those things where you have to wait for the legislature to vote. It's already there.
So you know you're getting at least that much, but if you could possibly get more, am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, it's not likely to get more than that. I think last year's award was
maybe.
119,000. Just so you know how that's been used in the past. When we, you might remember that the library renovation was started in 2005. It started in 2003. It stalled in 2005 and the upper floor was not done. And the whole upper floor sat vacant for about 7 years. And then during that time, during the Great Recession, the cost of construction came way down to the point where there was enough money in the project to go ahead, still remaining in the project to finish it. But what we needed to do was tear down the old library to make room for it. So a LoCIP grant was used to do that. That's the kind of thing that, you can, it's like a stopgap that you can use. But yeah, we do have the ability to do that. Brian?
Matt, maybe you or Bob can answer this. So when we talk about the million in revenue in the growth in the grand list, how much of that's going to be used to cover the shortfall in revenue this year? I think it was at like what, 400, 450? Is that where that money's going to come from, Bob?
For the current fiscal year or the projected fiscal year?
The current fiscal year. Aren't
No,
we
I mean,
short
that
on
growth,
revenue?
that grand list growth is for fiscal year 22, not
22.
fiscal year 21.
And are we predicting a revenue shortage in 22?
A lot smaller than we have right now. I mean, I'll get into it, but just briefly, I mean, like Park and Rec is figuring that, come the summer and into the fall, programs may be back to somewhere near where they were pre-COVID, and if sales of homes in the town continue the way they are, our conveyance taxes are going to be up. The town clerk already has exceeded the current budgeted amount in conveyance taxes, and it's only 7 months into the 8 months into the year. So,
All right, thanks, Bob.
you're welcome.
Cynthia?
Yeah, I just have one more question about the roads. Do you know how much was actually spent last year on road repair?
I think Brad can probably look that up. Keep in mind that whatever we have allocated probably is not 100% spent because we hold back a little bit to get started in the spring because it goes on the fiscal year.
Okay, I was just curious in the amount. So if you're holding back 100 or 200, just want to know. So maybe Brad could get that.
I'm pulling it up now. You just
Okay,
need.
He's got Munis open on his computer there. So
yeah. I mean, it might have all been spent, but they try to do things like if they know they're going to be doing full depth reclamations on some roads and later in the summer, they'll try to order the materials in the spring so that they're there, like the concrete catch basins and things like that. Okay, so Mr. Chairman, do you want me to go through the departments?
Matt, we had the department presentations. Do you perhaps just want to go through those departments that the Board of Selectmen altered?
Okay, well, they go in order, so I'm gonna have to just flip through it until I hit one with a red flag on it. So I'll tell you what, in case you have questions about any particular departments, we can flip to the OpenGov system.
Matt, while you flip through that, I have the answer to
Yeah,
Cynthia's question. Of the 500,000 that was budgeted for fiscal year 21, 406, just under 463,000 of that has been spent.
Okay.
Matt is correct. Usually they hold more of that back, but their budget the last 2 years had been 700,000. So I think he was trying to get as much work done as he could in the summer and fall.
Yeah. So they're not going to have much to do in the spring, unfortunately, and we got some problems there too.
Okay, thanks, Brad.
All right, so I've already covered highway. I think the only thing that we really need to talk about then, fire departments and level. I am going to talk a little bit about capital when we get to the end of this. Health Department, the 13.7% increase you see there includes half a year for a full-time sanitarian. The target date to hire is January 1st, 22. If we can hire somebody, they are extraordinarily hard to find. It's been a real struggle for Lauren. And then moving into the police department, we removed one vehicle at 40,000, but we left in the overtime and the training increases that were there. And I'm sure Brian is probably looking at similar things in his role in his with his employer. You know, the police accountability bill is even though our department does most of the things required by that law anyway, there are some things that they have to worry about. And one of the things we're going to have to deal with in capital is body cameras. Those have to be up and running by, I think, Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's like July 1, 22, correct? And you have to have the cameras purchased and operational and a computer server storage archiving system in place. So these other departments, no changes. Yeah, go ahead.
The overtime, I see it's jumped up. How much does it jump up? Because on the printed report, it doesn't show me the dollar amount. It's 280,000 now, but what was it last year?
Brad, do you have that handy?
The increase is 39,000. It was cut by 39,000 for fiscal year 21 budget. The fiscal year 20 budget, it had been the 380 or 280, whatever it is. So they're just to go back to the fiscal year 20 balance.
And Brad, you may be able to answer this. I know when there's someone out on workman's comp or on military leave, that salary offsets the overtime that the other officers are doing. How much in the red is this a 360 account with salaries?
Well, because it was cut for the fiscal year 21, it's hard to say at this point because you're right. Some of it is the full-time salaries come in lower and they have more overtime. We'd have to really get that answer from the chief because he follows that more.
Okay.
If you want to figure, you know, I'll make a list of these things and we can email those answers back to you if you like.
Okay, well, that's just one of the answers, you know, because again, the overtime has always been a sticking point there, but with all the other salaries that melt that pot down, you know, it's always been pretty close, you know what I mean? So I just had that question, that's all.
You know, historically over the last 11, 12 years, this question always comes up and it's kind of a funny thing. The department always tries to move the overtime budget up to make it more reflective of reality, and previous boards of finance move it down to make the number look better. So the overtime gets overrun, but then it's offset by the reduction in regular salary, as you point out. I guess it's just a question of where you want to put the numbers.
Okay, thank you.
Nick, if you just straight lined their salaries and overtime through the year, after 8 months, they're like $3,000 off what their budget should be after 8 months. But the chief would have a better understanding of how his overtime flows, if it's less in the winter, you know, so.
So during the pandemic, we're 3,000 still on the good side or the bad side?
Let me pull that. We are 3,000 to the good side.
So we're after all this, we're still 3,000. So, okay, thank you for that information.
No change in Parks and Rec, employee benefits, no change there. No change in government agencies. All the different agencies we do business with held the line. Utilities, a very slight decrease. Seeing a little bit of lift from the solar farm and the LED systems that we put in place. Reduction in wage contingencies and miscellaneous charges and transfers. Slight increase in senior center. No change in library. We know all about that. And Board of Education has been presented. Maintenance has been presented. Town operating has been presented. This is what the ballot would look like on the town side when you add in town operating, school maintenance and debt. And this is the entire package. This is capital needs. And this is, I want to be very careful about this.
Stop you before you go real quick. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no,
The-
go ahead.
You go back one screen.
That one?
That 3.5, I'm sorry, 345.
Right.
Is that with the new revenue, estimated new revenue number?
No, there's no revenue. That's just expenses.
So what's the real number if we take the 700 to 1 million of new revenue?
Well, that's something that your board is going to do over the next couple of meetings, working with Bob Kozlowski, because that, at this stage of the game, that some of that revenue is not fully known. So I'm only dealing with the expenses right now.
New spending is 345. Okay, I got you.
Yep.
Matt, earlier there was a slide, I think, that gave 3.43, and there was about a $10,000 difference. Maybe it just wasn't updated, or
It might not have been updated because I'm a terrible proofreader. When we go through this, I tried to go through and update all the slides.
it's
Brad,
the town/school budget summary. Town, school maintenance, debt. And it had a total of 2,739, 126, as opposed to
Okay,
240.
that was, this is the right number, the 749. That slipped through without me fixing it.
Okay.
Because there was a change. Yeah, Cynthia.
Yeah, is this the same presentation that you made to the Board of Selectmen?
Yes.
Okay, because I went through that and I don't know if the same slide numbers apply, but there were a couple questions I had about the totals that you had in there. And this was on slide 9, that I think you had the total for 2021 as 80,015.10, and then what was approved was 79,765.10. So basically that's like a $250,000 difference. So it would be what you said was the change was 3.43%, but it would be actually 3.75%. So I'm just, believe me, I went through this because math's not my, I have to think about it. But I did watch your presentation.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to double check some of these numbers.
Yeah. Brad, the slide I have up right now is the right number, right?
Those are the right numbers. Matt, if you remember when you did your slideshow for the Board of Selectmen,
Yeah.
At the time that you did the slide, you were thinking of taking the roads down from 900 to 700.
Correct, yeah.
When in actuality, you wanted to take them down to 500,000.
Yeah.
And the slide wasn't updated. So
Yep.
Cynthia, that could be part of a $200,000 swing right there.
Yeah, 250,000.
Yeah,
and
that's my bad. I apologize for that.
Okay, I just, look, I need to, I can't afford to have you be a bad proofreader. And then there was this was slide 49 in your presentation where you had the current town operating, maintenance, and debt as 33,054. No, sorry, I think this one was right. I apologize. Slide 50, sorry.
Well, I'm goofing. I'm going to goof up your whole system.
Because there's different
I
slides, right?
I had a whole bunch of slides in the beginning, like on economic
Right.
indicators and stuff. But is this the number you're referring to right there?
No, what I have is a total for this year or the coming year, 82,504 82,504,136 for the total for the upcoming year.
May I just make a suggestion? Bob Kozlowski sent around the latest numbers today,
Yeah.
and I would just suggest we use those numbers.
Okay, that's fine. I just, I'm
Yeah,
trying to, get this
It's
right
the
in my
last
head.
sheet in that package.
Okay,
I know earlier in the day, there was a $10,000 change. I think it might have been 33,054,048. So maybe that was in the old presentation.
it could have
Ye-
been. I will look to
Yeah.
what you sent. That's fine. Thanks.
Just to ground us all right, just so that we're all using the same base numbers.
Yeah. And what I'll do is I'll correct that slide that's still off. And I'll send this to you if you want, so you can see the other economic stuff that's in it. I'll email that to everybody. So let me move on. We are not proposing any capital needs to go on the ballot or in the town meeting. The capital can be addressed through capital non-recurring. So this does assume that we will maintain the current capital non-recurring amount, which I think is 650 for this year, 650,000. So this is not a complete list. These are the top priorities, starting with the HVAC system at the high school. And then we do expect to equip the training range this year so that our police department gets the value that we put into that building. And just so you know, we're very, very close to a settlement on the issue with the leaking wall that has been in the paper, and that will not cost the town of Bethel anything to move forward with that. So we do plan to equip the training range. Mandatory air pack and bottle replacements are on tap for both fire departments. Municipal Center, elevator number 1. Both elevators need refurbishment. One of them needs it worse than the other. And I mean, last summer, people were getting stuck in the elevator and having to be rescued like once a week. It's getting to the point where it's impossible to not address that. We do want to go ahead and we need to replace one big truck a year for a while. We don't want to replace more than that. You don't want to have them all coming up due to be replaced at the same time. But one big truck and one medium truck. And then these last 2 items, we have a revaluation coming up again in 2022. That process is going to start. And what we've done for most of the last 10 years is we amortize that over a 5-year period, set money and capital aside to perform that. But here is a new item, the last item, building department, scanning and digitizing the permits and the back files. And I can't tell you how important it is that we start this. As a matter of fact, I think for one of our next meetings, I'm going to take pictures, seeing as how we're still kind of on COVID lockdown. I'm going to show you how unbelievably cramped that office is with paper files. We are light years behind the rest of the world. And we are finally on the verge right now of going to a fully online permitting system that will allow, and I've been trying to get this done for 8 straight years, and it's actually in beta testing right now, and it's being used with some departments. We're getting ready to roll it out. This will save us overtime. It will speed up process. It will make the process much smoother for our contractors and homeowners. And most of all, it will keep us from having to hire more people to do this work in the future, because so much of it will be automated. But a key part of this is to take the decades worth of records and start the process of scanning them and digitizing them, pretty much the way our town clerk's office has done for the last decade or so. You can't do it all at once. It's a massive job, but we have to get started. So this is like an annual fee that we're going to have to invest in to make this department efficient, and it will save us money in the long run, really almost immediately once we get the system up and running.
Matt, these items look to all be included on the sheet that you shared with the Board of Selectmen, with the one exception of the ad for the building department, scanning and digitizing. Am I reading that correctly?
Yes, you are. That's correct.
Okay, good deal. Thank you.
Yeah, you'll find the building department on the 10-year capital plan. It's up at the top. It's right up there with the assessor.
So you just pulled it in a little bit.
Yep. Yeah, Cynthia, go ahead.
Oh, just, I didn't calculate this fast enough. Do you know what the total is for all of these things?
The total list that we have of things that need to be done is like, not including a fire truck, which we have to address at some point. It's like 2.1 million. And
Right.
we're not, since since we started this, this system of paying cash for things out of capital non-recurring, we kind of hold things back to the end of the year and only address the top priorities. So this is just a small part of what we need to do. So this is like 1.1.
9, roughly 1.9.
Yeah.
Okay. And just a quick question, because I know these are things that you said that wouldn't go on the ballot, but I'm just wondering about your thinking about the firing range not going on the ballot.
Well, it goes
Right.
with this was the plan all along from the very beginning, was to put it through the system. So
But
first,
it wasn't approved. That was not approved. I mean, it was approved without the firing range. I know that was the plan all along, and I'm saying this respectfully,
Yeah.
that it seems that the taxpayer should have an opportunity to vote on what they had previously rejected or not, it had been included. I just want to know what your thinking is
well,
about that.
I guess, Matt, if it's under $1 million, it can just go to the town meeting at that point
yeah,
and be voted on.
yeah,
Well, I don't know if that rule was in place when we actually voted on it.
yeah, it was. Yeah, that's been around for a long time. But, this process, here's the.
I know you can do it, but I mean, it's kind of irrelevant. You can do it,
Yeah,
but yeah, I don't know. And the town meeting is so lopsided. It just seems, I don't know. It seems wrong to me.
well, I hear your point. I
Okay.
would ask, why would the taxpayers invest, vote yes for the police station and invest in a training range, knowing that it still has to be equipped later, knowing that that wasn't part of it, and then not put in the money for the equipment? It's money, it's sunk cost that you can't get back, that you have no value for because you can't use it.
I get it, but that sort of nullifies the vote of the people that voted for it without the firing range included. That's all. We won't talk about this anymore because it's not deliberating, but
Okay.
I mean, I might bring it up again, but thanks for your answer.
Okay, you're welcome. And by the way, none of this stuff gets spent without a bid, approval by Board of Selectmen and then Board of Finance. It still has to go through that stuff.
So Matt, does that take you through the entire Board of Selectmen presentation?
Yeah, it does. One thing to leave you with, I almost feel bad dumping this on you at the last minute. The American Rescue Act, which is what President Biden's otherwise was formerly known as the Coronavirus Relief Act #3. They passed, the House of Representatives passed this over the weekend, renamed it the American Rescue Act. Now, I bring this up because, to that point where we were talking about earlier about how some of our residents are hurting and others are doing well. It is almost a foregone conclusion that this act is going to be passed by the Senate because they're using the reconciliation process to avoid filibusters. So this is going to go through. This will send $1,400 to all qualified taxpayers. So I think up to a family income below 150,000, at least they get a prorated amount of that. And it's important because when you looked at the retail sales, I think I mentioned to you that retail sales surged in the state of Connecticut and actually produced enough sales tax revenue to wipe out that projected deficit. That was because of coronavirus relief package #1. So there is a direct impact from Washington to our residents and their ability to kind of get through this thing. But the thing that's really interesting is that this allocates $345 billion to local governments to offset the costs that local governments around the country have had to absorb in dealing with the pandemic. So when you look at the prorated amounts that filter down, the estimate in the sheet that we received by email today says that Bethel is eligible for 1.9 million in funding. Now, A, that still has to pass the Senate. B, they have to decide how that's going to come. Is that going to be for education, for other services, for both? Is it going to be spread over 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? Those questions we don't know, but over the next few weeks, we'll probably get more information about that. But that is a factor that I would advise that the Board of Finance keep their eye on, because it could have an impact on how you go about your business and your deliberations. So
Matt, are you suggesting that might be available for the next budget year, or when would that?
it could
take
be.
effect?
I don't think we know yet. I don't think you can plan on it, but I just wanted to make you aware of it. Over the next 2 or 3 weeks, we'll probably hear more about it.
Thank you.
Hey, Matt,
Yeah.
it was a lot of great information here, and I appreciate it. But you know, you showed one slide from the last stimulus money, how unemployment picked up. I mean, you're saying Bethel's doing so good, but it seems like the federal government writes checks and then we do good. I mean, obviously, the federal government can't keep propping everybody up.
Sure, I agree.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Anyway, so on behalf of all of us here at Town Hall, I want to thank you for your attention, for your consideration, for your questions. And
Hello,
yeah, you have another one?
sorry.
Matt, I think Cynthia has another question,
Sorry.
please.
The always verbal Cynthia. Okay, so here, I just have a little bit of a problem with the pandemic. It's bad and yet it's good because we get money from the federal government, but it's a false safety net. So it can't be used as a reason to increase spending because we got these stimulus packages that are supposed to make people whole, not to have windfall profit. It's not a windfall profit. And then some people aren't made whole at all.
That's very true. I want to make sure I'm saying this correctly. I did not say the pandemic was good for anybody. What I'm saying is that not everybody is affected equally. And even without the government stimulus, I mean, take that right out of it. Even before the very first coronavirus relief package, our building permits were off the charts. There were people moving into town, renovating houses, putting in additions, renovating bathrooms. So that's independent of anything the federal government is doing. I'm saying there is an effect on that, but some people are doing okay. I'm not by any means suggesting that it's time to go out of the spending spree. Not by a long shot. What I'm saying is our job is tougher because we have people that have been hit, but we still have tremendous demand for services coming through the system that we have to deal with.
I just want to clarify that I wasn't implying that you said it was good. I'm saying that that's, because it depends on how you look at it. And I just wanted to be clear that I'm simply saying that this is intended to make people whole, and we'll be paying federal taxes on this. This is going to reflect in taxpayer tax increases. So, I just wanted to make that point. I don't think you thought it was good to have the pandemic.
No, I'd rather just have a regular year with no pandemic. I think that would be much preferable.
All right. Any more questions from the Board of Finance and its members to Matt? Okay, thank you. All right. I don't see any hands up. Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it. Board of Selectmen, thank you. We know you guys had a hard task ahead of you, or you did have a hard task to deal with, and appreciate the thoughtfulness in your deliberations and in the product that you presented to us. We are about 1 hour into it. My suggestion would be to take a 5-minute break and then come back for another hour or so. Board of Finance, folks, what do you think? Just give me a yes. No, looks like it's a unanimous. So let's take a 5-minute recess. So,
All right, we're recording again.
good deal. Bob and Brad, we've heard the Board of Selectmen's proposal. Can you just provide us with kind of the high water marks, the key metrics of the proposal as presented by the Board of Selectmen. For example, the increase in spending and the increase in the projected tax / mill rate using the projections that you have now, the estimates that you now have for net revenue.
Okay, so Matt's, I think it was his last slide, added up to 82,514,136. That's a 2,749,126 increase, or 3.45 percent increase overall. That equates to, at this point, the current mill rate is 33.74. We would be looking at a mill rate approximately around 34.70, or 3.87% increase in taxes. If you're looking at a $217,000 home, the tax increase on that home would be $209.09, $209.09. Looking at the revenue, assuming that the pandemic winds up passing us by this fiscal year, hopefully, and we're kind of back to normal. Certain departments like Park and Rec is looking. We have a reduction in revenue in that department, but certainly, it's a lot higher than the current year. We have the senior center. It's down a little bit, but higher than what it is currently. That's a small increase. I mean, they were budgeted at 48. We're looking at about 36, and we're hoping we can do that. Building permits and conveyance taxes, they seem to be doing really well. So we're looking at maybe a potential of being down around $275,000 in revenue compared to what we budgeted last year. One of the items we do have in there is interest, and we spoke about this. It's been cut down from 500 to 200, so there's a $300,000 cut. I think at this point, talking to the financial advisors that we have, there are some indications that maybe the second half of the fiscal year, the first half of 22, maybe we could be looking at a little uptick in interest rates. Not a lot, but so maybe that 200 is a little bit aggressive. Maybe it should come down to 125, 150, but certainly the way the conveyance taxes are going right now and the Park and Rec revenue, it would certainly offset that, and if we were shy by 25 or 50, it's not a major cut to the mill rate, certainly. So, we'll before we finalize the mill rate, we'll look at that a little bit closer too, so. I mean, that's pretty much where we are. We'd be looking at, like I said, somewhere around 34.70 or 3.87% increase in tax revenue.
Bob, it'd be 2.86, not 3.87.
Oh, 2.86.
Okay, so just to recap, again, the kind of key metrics in total, knowing that we've got some more work to do as things develop on the revenue side. The proposal made by the Board of Selectmen increases spending by 3.447%, and that would result in an increase in mill rate or an increase in taxes of 2.86%. Right, those are kind of, I think, the summary of the key metrics.
Correct.
Okay. Bob, Brad, Terry, I think I see Terry. It may still be too early, but sometimes in this process, right, things come around late, maybe state grants, insurance. Any thoughts on whether there will be changes in those areas?
So our medical broker advised us probably within the last week that we could probably reduce our estimate by 1%, but 1% for the medical insurance, that 1% would equate on the town side to roughly $30,000 in less expenses.
Okay.
And Bob,
That's the only one that we have at this point. Yeah.
Bob, on the board side, similar to the town side, we received updated numbers also.
Okay,
So we believe that we can reduce by $100,000 because we also could reduce by 1%. We also recently found that out.
So I'm assuming that's Department 390, employee benefits.
On our side? Or-
on the town side for the
Yes,
Board of Ed, it's in their budget.
right. On our, it's on the 450. Right, Terry?
Yes, it's under benefits. Our 2000 series under benefits.
What is your all's recommendation as to how to consider those two items in our deliberation tonight and tomorrow night?
We are telling you to consider them.
So book
That's correct.
Mhm.
We legitimately got the reduction. Typically, we don't get it till later in the season. But now that we're in the state partnership plan, I think they had some earlier numbers for us, right, Terry?
They were receiving a lot of pressure to let the towns know better numbers. Usually they're predicting what claims are going to look like for the year after July 1. So the closer you get to that, the more accurate they can be. But they had their folks and underwriters and everybody run some numbers. They know under these times that the sooner they could get some better information out to the municipalities that participate, the better off we all are.
So Board of Finance members will take this into consideration when we get to those departments. Brian, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just had a quick question for Matt. Matt, in your presentation, you had mentioned that there was approximately $1.9 million that the town of Bethel could receive. Is that including money for education, or is that strictly on the town side?
Absolutely no idea. I mean, we literally just got this, that I see Dr. Carver's raising her hand. We literally just got this from Senator Murphy's office today as a projected possibility. So
Okay.
not much to it right now. Christine, do you know something more?
Well, just that we were also told that there will be another round of funding to the school. It's called ESSER 3. Remember, we talked about ESSER 2.
Yeah.
And we don't know how much it's going to be, and we don't know if it's part of that amount. I don't. But I am hoping that it'll kick out the funding another year. So remember, we talked about that grant was 2 years. That, in terms of the when we had to spend that grant. So hopefully it will kick out even more years.
Thank you.
I just don't know how much.
Any other questions from Board of Finance members? I don't see it. Oh, Cynthia?
Well, any questions you mean for the people that presented or just?
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, I got us off course a little bit. About either these late breaking changes.
Well, I can make a comment that I think that there are going to be more late breaking changes. And I also know that the stimulus package contains, if it passes through the Senate, contains education funding that will be spread over 2022 to 2028. And I think there are a lot of, I think there's going to be a lot of funds coming from the federal government and the state. So I think that, especially because it's March 2nd and you have this late breaking, I think you're going to have more late breaking. And I think we need to consider that in terms of raising taxes on people who are struggling right now.
And I take it, Dr. Carver, and maybe Matt, since the communication came from Senator Murphy, he's referring to federal funds that are going to come through the reconciliation.
Okay.
That's exactly what we were referring to. And I would be pleased if it extended out further past 2024. Rosa DeLaura met with, and she's in chair of appropriations, met with CAPS, the organization, And they were talking about 2024, but I'd be thrilled if it was extended out longer.
Well, that's just, I heard that explained by, I think the press secretary. The 2022 to 2028.
The Democrats are trying to get the reconciliation done by the end of next week. So Cynthia, to your point, we're just gonna have to keep an eye on it. Okay. What I'd like to do next, and this is along the same lines of what we've done in prior years, I'd like to get the Board of Finance members to give us a little bit of their thoughts as to the proposal, perhaps where they'd like to try to take our deliberations before we jump into the department by department deliberation. I might start with Robert, just given he's the vice chair of this board, and then we'll loop around based on how the Hollywood Square presentation is. So Robert, if you don't mind, would you mind sharing with not only the rest of the board, but the folks on the Zoom call, kind of where you are and where you hope to maybe drive this?
All right, thanks, Bob. And first of all, thanks, Matt and Rich and Paul for putting together that presentation, and it's very thorough. I know how much work goes into this, so it's thoughtful and considerate, and I think that it's a really good presentation. I do appreciate your comments about this being a K-shaped economy, that there's a good segment of our town people that are doing very well in this economy, as evidenced by stock markets and corporate bonuses and things, but there's a significant portion that are not doing as well, as represented by the unemployment. And so it's really a tricky thing, which we went through last year in a K-shaped economy. How much do we rely on the people that are doing well versus the people being considered of people that are struggling? And because property tax is not necessarily progressive, it's really tough to tweak it so that we can satisfy both ends of the spectrum. But, no one said this was going to be a wonderfully easy job. When you look at the budget, there are certainly some hard things that we, are faced with that are beyond tweaking, and that's obviously our debt service. And I think that we've worked hard over the years, the Board of Finance collectively, to manage down our debt. We could be in a much worse pickle than we are. We knew the schools were going to be financed. We knew that was coming, and we managed down short-term debt to such a point where I think we should thank ourselves and thank the community for supporting us to be in such a great position right now. But again, another $846,000 in debt service is something that is a big piece of this budget. The other thing that we can't touch are the contracted salary increase, the 2% plus step increases. That's something that's certainly beyond our control. So those two drivers certainly indicate that we're going to have to increase, unfortunately, our taxes and to accommodate. But on the other side, my feeling or my hope or desire is to try to keep the overall increase below the 2% bracket. I would love to see us look hard at this and come in below 2%. So that would mean taking the 3.45 that we have here today down to about 2.7. That delta is about 600,000, but with this insurance savings, that now looks like about $470,000. So, ideally, I would like to find somewhere in that neighborhood of $470,000 so that we can deliver to the town at the public hearing a budget that has a 2% increase, which would keep the mill rate to about a 2/3 increase to 34.41 by our calculations. So that's where I would like us to get. The difficult thing is the path, and the path that I think that we should explore is using, and this was kind of brought forth by our colleague Nick, thinking about the unexpended educational fund that we put forth, the 1% fund, and how that might be used to offset some of the education increases. The other thing is the salaries. We have contracted salaries, we have non-contracted salaries. I think we need to look hard on salaries where we have some discretion on, and whether this is the right time to increase those salaries, or maybe just freeze them or hold them at a very modest rate. And the third area that I think that we need to look at has to do with the programs that in the budget seem planned to increase July 1st, the first day of the budget, for Senior Center and for Parks and Rec. And I think that that's just, unfortunately, overly optimistic that we're going to have full programs, revenues, and cost of programs come July 1st. I think a better planning would be second quarter of next year. And so I think there's some adjustments that could be made in those program costs in order to meet this target that I suggested. So that's where I am. A little long-winded maybe, but that's my initial thought.
Thank you, Robert. Brian, may I ask you to go next?
Sure. When I looked at the budget, one of the things that I try and look at every year is where's inflation. And this year it's really tough to figure out. I mean, the markets, especially like in construction, the lumber, I mean, the increases we're seeing are astronomical, but I don't know if that's going to go through the whole year once the pandemic eases. And, they're having a hard time explaining to us, what the real thing is that's driving these costs. So, I think some of the government agencies and some of the leading, experts are predicting inflation is going to be 1.4 in that range, somewhere around there. But, who really knows? So, I understand that a town can't operate strictly on inflation, and, we do have some needs that, generally I'm not always in favor of new employees, but I think if this pandemic taught us anything, that, our health department's very important to us. And, I think Laura can definitely use some help in her endeavors over there. I'm going to try not being long-winded. I guess, I understand Robert's point, the 1% unexpended account. I would hope if we were going to use that, it would only be for maintenance issues, because, anytime we take money and artificially infuse it into an operating budget, all we really do is create an issue next year. We're kicking the can down the road. So if there's some maintenance issue, things maybe in the 450 account that we could look at, that maybe spend out of that. But, my overall number, for a spending increase, I would be comfortable maybe in the 1.8 range, somewhere around there, taking into inflation and saying, all right, well, we know inflation where it's at. It could fluctuate, a little bit more, especially with rising energy costs and things like that. But, I'm thinking 1.8, you would have my support on the budget for the first go around.
Thank you, Brian. D Foster, would you mind going next?
Sure, thanks, Bob. I think, both Robert and Brian have brought up some really good points. And I think, as we look at the recovery from this pandemic, it's clearly not a uniform recovery, as Matt had mentioned. And I would just like us to really keep in mind, that it is not a uniform recovery. Some folks are doing well, perhaps even better than they were before, because they're not spending money on things like commuting and dry cleaning and all those things. But dry cleaners and restaurant owners and others are not doing very well. And I think we just have to really prioritize this budget, and anything that is perhaps discretionary or could be put off till next year, I'd like to encourage us to really, have a good debate about that. And so, the numbers that Robert and Brian threw out, I think are appropriate. And I would be able to get on board with those. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Dee. Cynthia, would you mind going next, please?
Oh, that's good. A couple of things. One is that this is not an even, I don't know, I don't think we can really compare this to 2008 recession, because that was more across the board. People were taking cuts in pay, but a lot of people were keeping their jobs, and, people weren't really dying at any great rate other than normal causes. And we didn't have state mandated lockdowns. So I'm just saying that that's what's different about this than 2008. By the same token, I think that we have to look at this. I don't think we can look at this like a regular budget. And I think by the same token that that the Board of Ed and the town can't predict what money could be coming down the road further along, by the same token, how can we predict that programs will suddenly garner revenue? I think that, if you're going to be, what's the word I'm looking for? If you're going to be hesitant to commit to one, you have to be hesitant to commit to the other. I also, and this is just another part of it, that in the private sector, when things get, company starts going through a rough patch, they don't necessarily hire more people. They tend to spread the work across the board. I know that's what the Board of Ed's been doing, and I know that's what the town's been doing. And, I don't want to appear ungrateful, because I know everybody's working hard. On the other hand, it just seems that the people who financially are not affected by this are government employees. And I'm not trying to be ungrateful. Just a fact, a point of fact. I know a lot of restaurants are not doing well. How could they? And it's just, this is just really uncharted territory. We've never really gone through something like this. Now, from my standpoint, the three departments that I generally don't support increases are the health department, social services, and the senior center. But honestly, I would be more apt to look at them more generously, because because of the pandemic, because of a fallout from the pandemic, they are taking on a lot more stuff. I know the Board of Ed too, and there's all the incumbent problems with the remote learning and everything. I understand that's stressful, but I also feel for the parents of the children or the guardians who are having to step up and arrange their work schedules, if they're lucky enough to have work schedules. And then the cost of living increase. I mean, a lot of people have had a cost of living decrease. It's just, we just have to really start to look at the head count as not necessarily mandatory. Well, I remember a forum a few years back, and Bill Kingston, who was the former head of the board, chairman of the Board of Finance, said, in response to the question, why do property taxes go up? Head count. That's what he said. So I do actually want to know the total of employees that the town and school have together. That is one of my questions, just to know that. But that's just my overall opinion. Thanks.
Thank you, Cynthia. Bob, Brad, while we kind of continue this, can you work on Cynthia's request about breaking out the employees by town and Board of Ed, please? We'll see if we can multitask as we do this. Again, Cynthia, thank you. Nick, would you mind going next?
No problem. I appreciate the opportunity. There's been a lot said. Cynthia has some great points there. I would love to give the school, the town, as much as we can give them. The kids are obviously the most important thing in this town, and hopefully some of them stay in this town and keep growing this town. But we're not there. Well, I'm not there. We're in a bad spot. I've lived here a long time, and I go down Main Street and I know what's going on. You talk to people, you look at people's houses, look at the side of their houses. They're fixing up the front, but they're not fixing up the sides. So the people are struggling. We all know that. I have a problem with all these new employees, head counts, because again, it's just a runaway train. And, the first thing we're going to hear in this public hearing is it's only $67 more. It's only $87 more. That's not the point. The point is it's $6,087 or $7,087. The people are struggling to pay the whole tax bill, not just the $67 increase or the $87 increase. So there's a lot been said. I supported it going out of the hole there last year to go to a public hearing. Thank God that the public has a right to do it. But I think we need to do the hard work and get the budget right, because the first budget is always the best budget. If we try to kick this can down the road and we put it out there and, say the schools pass, but then the town fails, what are we going to do now? The town is going to suffer. And, it's just not what happens at Whittlesey Drive up there. It's the whole town. That's what's important to me. So I have a hard time supporting a tax increase during a pandemic. I mean, 500,000 people died. There's $1.9 trillion money being thrown into this economy because they're scared what's going to happen. And we're ready to raise people's taxes. I turn on one channel and I see this, and then I hear, and again, Matt did a great presentation. And I really think the town looks good and is trying to do good, but people are struggling still. So I understand the contracts we have to pay, the obligations of the contracts, increases in salaries, and they all deserve it. So I'm willing to do that. On some of these increases on staffing, I have a little bit of a problem. But if you get it down 1.5, maybe 6, 1.6, I would support it for a public hearing. But I think it's wrong to put a burden on these people that are struggling right now. So that's all I have to add. And again, everybody had great comments, and I appreciate the thought, and the presentations were excellent. I really feel the Board of Ed feels that this is what we need, not what we want. And the towns, the town departments, a lot of them came in at 0. I thought they were very responsible. So, I'm interested to see where we go from here.
Thank you, Nick. Karen, your first time through in our budget season. What are your thoughts?
I appreciate going soft on me and letting me be last. Everybody said good things, and I'm thinking the same things as everyone's been talking. But one thing that has been in my mind is that, yes, Matt has said, and we've all said, some people are doing well, some people are not doing well. But we have to think about those people who are not doing well. And I think that, I definitely want to see this under 2, closer to whatever we can get under 2. And how do we get there? I don't know. I'm new to this, and I heard all these budget presentations, and you all work so hard, and you all deserve everything you're asking for, but something's got to give. And I think we can get there. I think that there are also some very smart people in charge of these departments who are very creative and are doing the best they can to help us get there. Hopefully there'll be some more relief money. The 1.9 million mentioned coming to the town, that would be great. And maybe there's more coming to the schools. I think that, as someone else mentioned, there's some opportunity to cut from programs that may not really be used much. I understand the parents need their kids to come to the programs because they need the daycare. Are the seniors going to come to their programs? I don't know. There's some things to look at there, I do think. And I do think it would be irresponsible of us to put an increase out there greater than 2% when people aren't getting raises. They don't even have a job sometimes. They don't know if they have a job to go back to. They don't know when unemployment is going to run out. So I think that everybody is playing things close that way. And I know, we save money on commuting and dry cleaning, but we're paying extra for grocery delivery. It kind of all washes out there. And I think that people are getting by as they can. So that's kind of where I am with it. I definitely want to be under 2. I think that people have already mentioned some great paths to get there. I think Matt came up with some good cuts to start with, and I do think we can get there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Karen. I really can't add much to what was already said. I guess I would just say, again, thank God this budget will go to referendum. Okay. Nobody is happier than the 7 folks who are on the board of finance, that this is going to go. We'll have our town meeting, whatever form it takes, and it'll go to referendum. In that case, it's a little different than last year. I think the responsibility of this Board of Finance is to put forward to the public hearing a budget that has a chance of passing. Right? Not necessarily that it will pass or has a high probability of passing, but I think something that has a sporting chance of passing. And I just think that budget at 2.86% tax increase doesn't meet that hurdle. So we need to get it lower. We'll begin that process now. All right, we're going to do the department. Well, before we kick off, any other last kind of comments, questions? Matt, you got your hand up.
Yep.
Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I want to make one statement to hopefully add some perspective as you start your deliberations. I heard several members talk about, I'm going to hit it head on wages. Somebody mentioned a wage freeze of people who are not unionized. I want to give you my perspective on this because the number of people, the gross number of people, the total, who are not protected by unions on either side, either town or school, is very small. It fits on one page. Even our top administrators in the school district, exclusive of Dr. Carver, are member of a union. They will get their contracted increases. The highway department will get their contracted increases. The custodians will get their contracted increases. They will also pay more as part of those bargaining agreements for other services. So they get a little bit here, they take away something over there. I want to point out that the people that you're talking about are literally just my department heads. Those are the only ones, almost the only ones that you can hit and freeze their wages. Now, many of our members here have a really good, solid financial background. Bob Manfreda, starting with you, but others too on your board. You know, you know finance, you're conservative, you know numbers. And I'm going to pose an argument to you. What do we tell our kids as they're coming out of college and they're getting their first job? And I can remember my dad sitting me down and having this conversation, and he said, no matter what you do, save money, pay yourself first, even if you can only afford to do this much, because over time it accumulates and it's important, even though small amounts is important. And I bring this up because my department heads don't get raises. Now somebody's going to accuse me of parsing words here, but what they get are cost of living increases. We benchmark their jobs with other similar jobs in the public sector, and we make sure that they are being compensated fairly. And then year after year, what they primarily get is a cost of living increase, because the opposite of that example I just gave you is also true. If your wages are staying stagnant, you're going backwards. You are losing purchasing power. And when I came here 11 years ago, I want to tell you, our compensation system was a mess. And in some of our departments, our morale was a mess. So yes, it can be viewed by some people as unfair that in the middle of a pandemic, when some, not everybody, when some people are hurting, that we would give these non-union people a cost of living adjustment to keep them level, to keep them from going backwards. And I'm going to tell you something, when times are good, guess what they get? They get a cost of living adjustment. And over the 10 years I've been here, I've lost 2 department heads who thought that they should have got more. And what I had to say to them was, if you think you're worth more, then you have to go shop yourself around, because this is the program that we have here. You're pegged in a range, and we try to keep you from going backwards. So I'm going to appeal to this board Don't take away my ability to do that, to keep my people level, because that's what we're trying to do. If you're talking about freezing wages, you're talking about telling Laura Basile that she's not going to get a cost of living increase next year. And by the way, what you saw in the presentation I did was their cost of living increases from a year ago, not projected out. We haven't even decided that yet. So same with Eileen Earl, same with Tommy Galliford, the people that are making the COVID clinic work. Same with Chris Baldwin, the guy who's our building official who's been working 6 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week to keep up with things. They don't get overtime, they're not eligible. So I am asking you, in the interest of fairness and equity, don't punish them. It's very difficult to compare public sector to private sector, but it's a basic issue of fairness. Don't take that away from them just because they're literally almost the only people in our workforce that don't have a union. And I think that that's a very important point. And I'll leave it at that. I'm not interested in starting a debate. I just wanted you all to know how I felt about that.
Cynthia, I think you had your hand up first.
Yeah, I don't want to start a debate, but I wanted to just offer to, and Matt, I appreciate everything you're saying, and I understand where you're coming from. I just want to put another perspective on it. There are departments who have come in at a 0% increase. I think it's up to each department to, if we're in times like this, then maybe they could cut expenses to accommodate the cost of living increases for those employees. You can say that you're already stretched to the bone, but on the other hand, rather than appealing, maybe there's a way to look at expenses. And I say this with all respect, Matt, because I know, I get your point, but I don't want to punish the people who came in at 0% in their departments. And so again, no debate, maybe we'll duke it out offline, but I just wanted to make that point.
No, actually, you raised a very good point, and I think that bears addressing. The departments have done that. My job, and I know Dr. Carver's job, is to give you a realistic budget based on those real costs. So look at any single department. The ones who reduced office expenses did so.
Mm.
If you take out postage, Ann Skako took out postage. And there's a really important point that everybody needs to understand. There's no such thing as doing more with less.
It's almost over.
There's no such thing as doing more with less. Every one of our jobs is hours on the job. It's hours poring over building plans. It's hours in the field doing personal inspections. You cannot possibly cut those without taking away those hours, because there's no shortcuts. There's no software that inspects a sewer field or a septic field. So, we've already done the exercise. We've tried very hard to do, Cynthia, exactly what you've asked for. So you take something, and keep in mind also, there are statutory limits to how long you have to wait to do these things. We can't issue a building permit 2 months after the application comes in. It's got to be done on a timely basis. Same with the restaurant inspection. All that math has already been done.
Brian, I think you had your hand up next.
Yep. This is actually either Bob or Brad. Just before we go into deliberations, I'm just trying to get 3 benchmarks on how much we would have to cut to get to a 2%, how much we would have to cut to get to 1.75%, and how much we'd have to cut to get to a 1.5%. If we could just get those numbers so we have an idea as we go along in deliberations where we're at.
You're talking about a
I
tax.
did a quick check before. 600,000 gets you to just under 2%.
All right, so to get to 1.75, where would you be?
I got to go back into the program and figure it out.
And then one.
Brad, you didn't do it, did you?
No, I'll pull that. To answer Cynthia's earlier question, we have 123 full-time employees at the town. 2 of those employees are split 50% with other funds. So really, if you were talking about full-time FTE, it'd be 122. But I will pull those numbers for you, Brian.
Yeah, I see Bob Manfred is punching away. Did you figure it out, Bob?
No, I was just taking notes on the full time. I can,
Yeah, I'm sorry, are you saying?
If we could just get that, Brad, I'd really appreciate it. It'll help me
100
going into deliberations.
122.
900,000 gets you to 155.
I
So
wanna know-
probably 950.
For 1.5 is 950?
Well, I went 950, I got 148, 1.48.
So somewhere around 750 would get us to like 1.75.
750 is 1.77.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Cynthia, did you want to just confirm something with Brad?
Yeah, I just texted you. 122 full-time equivalents or people?
There's 123 full-time employees, not counting the water and sewer departments, because that's not part of the general fund budget. 2 of those people, the EDC director, is paid 50% by the Economic Development Commission, and the admin in Public Works is paid 50% by water and sewer. So that's, if you take both of those as halves, if you're talking FTEs, that's how you get to the 122 instead of the 123.
Is that just the town or is that the Board of Ed?
That's the town. The Board of Ed would have their number.
Okay, I would like that number as well. I just want the whole.
Board of Ed is in the presentation on 450.
Okay, let me just leave through that. I thought maybe someone like
Yeah.
Terry or Christine.
Dr.
No,
Carver?
the board, Cynthia, we show the board on the Board of Ed presentation every year. We show categories of employees and we track FTEs from year to year. So you can see any change in the level of FTEs.
I
in the
actually
Board of
just
Ed
wanted a
budget.
number for the current, but okay. I mean,
Current is 401.53
Thank you.
for the year we're in now.
And that's how many people?
Well, it's the equivalent. We always track them as equivalents, 401.53.
Okay, so you don't know the number of people or just,
No, I don't know the number of actual standing people, but we track the position because some positions might be a 0.4, some positions might be a 0.6.
I understand.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else before we jump into the department by department? Nick, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to add, I agree with Matt on this, I'm not gonna say some stupid thing. When I go out for ice cream, both of my kids get ice cream. I think the department heads and I think Matt's position and Lisa's position, they should all get cost of living. It's not like we're trying to reward Matt. We're rewarding the position. We're trying to keep the people that we have, that we put the time and money into. So I support if most people are getting the increase, believe it or not, I support everybody getting it, not just some people. So that's all. Before we started deliberation.
And last thing, just to bring it home, that discussion would be Bob and Brad, correct me. If we want to have that discussion will take place in connection with, is it 420 where wage contingency is?
Correct. Mhm.
Okay. Scanning the Hollywood squares. Doesn't look like there are any questions. Okay, so let's, we got 8:30. We've been at it for a couple hours. If the Board of Finance members are up to it, I'd like to maybe take just 30 more minutes to go through the initial departments, which I, knock wood, I think we can get through pretty quickly. And that will give us a better start for tomorrow. Do any members of the Board of Finance have a violent, visceral, negative reaction to that approach?
One thing, are we meeting tomorrow or Thursday?
Sorry.
It's Thursday.
All the days blur together, Nick. I'm sorry, but I think officially it's Thursday.
And is that a 6:30 start or 7?
7.
7. Okay.
7.
Yeah, I'm sorry I was late today.
Cynthia, are you raising your hand because you have a negative, visceral,
it's
negative
just
reaction?
sort of a half raised hand because it's not visceral. I just feel that we would be able to I know I would be able to absorb everything that's been in my brain, and rather than, and I wanted to know if we're going to go in order, if we're going to jump around, because that's always been an issue, you know, different accounts, and some take more brain power than others. So
My thought was to do the department review in order of the departments. And part of the reason for doing that, if we look at the top half of the sheet, those departments are I think, the quicker discussions.
okay, I just want to suggest just a suggestion that we take the ones that we know that we just like, transfers and wage contingency, whatever the government entered, whatever transfers, just things that we generally just breeze through. And I say that to clear out the clutter so that we could really focus on meat and potatoes. Just my opinion.
All right, so Board of Finance, we'll do it democratically, small d. All those in favor of going by department order, just give me a show of hands. All right, so I think we're going to do that rather than kind of take out some of the, Cynthia, to your point, some of the miscellaneous. All right, to get this going, and again, to try to cover some ground, what I'd like to do, what I'll suggest is, as a formality, right, we need a motion and a second for purposes of discussion. I will suggest that I'll make the motion. Robert, if you don't mind seconding it for discussion, just to kind of keep that part of it moving, and then we'll discuss. Yeah, Brian?
And it's just a question. Rather than approving them tonight, would it make sense, just as we go through, make notes, say, we think this is gonna fly, and then see where we're at the end of deliberations, because we may have to come back rather than having to reopen accounts and say, well, we voted to approve it, but now we're gonna unvote to approve it. We could kind of just run through everything, right?
I think we've done what the former before, right? Which is, we've approved it. We've asked Bob and Brad to kind of tell us where they are. And if we feel like we're short, we've gone back and opened up an account.
We'll reopen it. All right.
I don't think there's anything that prevents us from doing that. All right. Nick, I'm sorry. It looks like you got a comment, a thought?
Tim Beeble had we talked about, during the budget process, and I think this is a budget process. And going back to Matt's point, if these not department heads, I think he takes care of it already, but there's I think it's the town clerk, the first selectman, and I think the voter, well, it's obviously Tim and Nancy, or Nancy's not there. Shouldn't we be discussing that now instead of sometime in the middle of summer when no one's paying attention?
No. And if I have the charter here. We've been through this a number of times, Nick. I'm happy to do it again offline, but just for the purposes of informing the folks on this call. Charter 10.9 provided that in the first year following the revision made for a particular provision, that those accounts, those individuals would get an adjustment to salary. Thereafter, so after the first year in which that decision was made, it's just annually.
So that's 10.9 there? I don't think I read that one.
Yeah,
Okay.
10-9. Yep.
Look at that offline. Thank you.
Yeah, please. And I'm happy. We've had this discussion a number of times.
You and I have.
No, not, you're right. Not you and I. And we've run it by town council, and we've run it by the council who drafted the charter provision. So I think it's the right answer.
I'll read it. Thank you.
Sure. All right. Now it's 8:35. Let's see what we can get done maybe in the next 25 minutes. All right. Beginning with Department 100. I will make a motion to accept the Board of Selectmen's proposal for Department 100 in the total amount of $299,430.
Second.
Not seeing any hands. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Those opposed. All right,
Motion on account 110 to approve the selectmen's at 5,500.
so you don't like my suggested approach?
I don't think this is going to be much debate. I'm trying to move it along for you.
Well, that means it's you to make. All right, so let's, Department 100, Treasurer. Motion to accept, right, as presented by the Board of Selectmen, $5,500.
Second.
Discussion. None. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That appears to be unanimous. All right, just continuing down the list. Department 120. I'll make a motion to accept the Board of Selectmen's proposal, total amount of $478,619.
Second.
Discussion.
Can you just explain to me auditing expenses again? Was that just did they just raise the cost?
Yeah, they're, I asked them for a quote, and that's their increase there for next fiscal year.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Okay. I lost track. Did we vote that already? No.
Mm-hmm.
All right. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
All right, Cynthia, at the end, we're going to ask you for a path to your reductions.
I will have one.
X1. Okay, excellent. All right, going down to Department 130, Town Clerk. I'll make a motion to accept the Board of Selectmen's proposal in a total amount of $235,580.
Second.
Discussion. Not seeing any hands. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, that one looks unanimous. Dion, are we going good enough for you? Good pace to take minutes? Okay. Next, Department 140, Assessors. I'll make a motion to accept the Board of Selectmen proposal for a total amount of $243,668.
Second.
Those, second, so discussion. All right, not seeing any hands for discussion. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so Cynthia, I think, was the only one opposing. Okay. Department 150, Tax Collector. I'll make a motion to accept the Board of Selectmen's proposal for the Department 150 in a total amount, $211,620.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay, next. Department 160, Professional Services. I'll make a motion to accept the Board of Selectmen's proposal, a total amount of $264,830.
Second.
Discussion.
Yeah, 352, Bob K, can you just tell us what that is? Legal services? Who's getting that money?
That's the attorneys that we used during the course of the year.
Just for what?
Marty's excess after his general counsel, he gets a stipend every month, and the remaining part of his bill gets charged to that account as well.
So that's Marty's pay right there, 215?
No. Right now, we have a court case with Berkshire Hathaway, so we're paying those attorneys. We're paying attorneys for land use throughout the entire town hall. Any attorney that we hire, their fees are going into that account.
And we went from 185 to 215?
Yeah, because if you look at the historical history, and especially since we're in an appeal process right now with Berkshire Hathaway, the legal fees are on the high side.
Okay, thank you.
So Bob, I remember you explaining when you presented this that the 215 was based on a 10-year average. What's the likelihood with the suits going on that will kind of, what's the over under on that? Do you expect that to hold pretty well, or do you expect us to possibly go over?
I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, if we would, it depends how long they drag it out at this point. You know, I have no idea where they are in the process. That's not the only legal fees that we're paying for. There's others during the course of the year that we're always paying for. Negotiations go to that account too, although this year we don't have it, but you have grievances, so we have to charge that to it. And there are grievances throughout the year, so any FOI cases go to that account, so.
Hey, Bob, don't forget the land use, because we've got 2 affordable housing appeals underway, and those are likely to be expensive too.
Brian?
I'm actually going to make a motion that we reduce this line by 5,000. I don't think it's that drastic of a cut, but I think in the grand scheme of things, every little bit's going to help us get to a number that we want to get to.
I would second that motion.
All right, so that is an amended motion. Now we have to vote. Well, you seconded it, Nick. Discussion on the second motion.
I have a question for Bob, kind of relative to this. What's our ballpark annual cost of FOI? Responding to FOI.
You know, I have been tracking it for about a year and a half or so, and just strictly legal fees, Marty's legal fees, they run about $7,500. But that doesn't include, and it doesn't get charged here, but employees' times to put information together. I mean, there's no way for us to be able to track that. We don't have a cost accounting system to do that, you know. So, but you know, the fees.
In fairness, employee time FOIs don't increase the budget. I mean, I do a lot of the department.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
I just do it in my hourly.
But it's just time that you have to spend as opposed to
No, I get it.
doing your regular job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, the original motion was 5,000. I think we have to start somewhere. So a certain department doesn't take a huge hit. So I think 5,000. Bob, can we make that work? Bob K?
Yeah, I mean, there's been cuts to this account in the past, and if it winds up being a situation during the course of the year, we overrun that account. You know, maybe, you know, like we've had in the past, we have an account that can support the overage, you know, so overall, you want the town to come in a surplus position, you know, even if it's just $50,000, you know.
I agree. Okay.
I have a problem with reducing this account because we know it's a fairy tale. We know we're not going to come under it. We know it's likely to go higher. And so I just think from a standpoint of being intellectually honest, if we should leave it where it is, or maybe ask Bob and Brad to think about what we really think is going to be the cost this year. And we look to those accounts that we have a better handle for. In other words, we know they're not going to absolutely be over in the fiscal year. This one is going to be over. Yeah, Brian.
Again, you know, if we're going to be completely intellectually honest, we wouldn't figure tax rates at 97.8. We would take a 10-year average and say we've, you know, covered 99%. We really don't know where we're going to be at the end of the year. But I mean, if we're really going to get down to a, you know, a budget that we all want to support, and we're all saying that, you know, we want to take the first step, you know, I mean, this is just a good starting point to me. And I don't think it's a 5 or whatever the cut is really that dramatic, and is going to, you know, it's putting, I can understand if I said, let's cut 40,000, you know, that would be, hey, that's not being, you know, honest about it. But I just think it's a good starting point. So I'll stop there.
Cynthia?
Yeah, I agree with Brian, and also that as we go through there, and I asked Bob K, will there not be other accounts, like you said, that can offset other accounts, like this account?
Well, that's what I said before.
Right. So I'm just saying, pursuant to what you said, it seems reasonable to cut this by 5,000 because there will be other accounts that could cover any overage.
Dee?
My question to Bob is just about what we did last year, Bob Kozlowski.
Mhm.
How much were we over last year based on what we had budgeted?
Brad could probably pull that up from Munis there.
So just in the 5352 account, we budgeted 160,000 and we spent 372,000 for fiscal year 20. For fiscal year 21, we've already spent 173,000 of the 185.
So the chances that we will be under are extraordinarily slim, and in fact, the chances that we'll be over are, I don't know if you're a betting person, maybe 99%.
And to continue Brian and Cynthia's logic, we're gonna need other accounts to be under because we know this account's gonna be over. All right, so any other discussion, then we're gonna vote on the amended motion.
I just want to add that I think that this is one of those throw the dart at the wall and see what it hits, because this is not something that we can control. If we have a legal action, we have to, meet the financial obligations to pay for it. And I think that the way Bob has gone about it is look at a 10-year average is probably about his best guess as you can do. So, I don't see that, being nickel and dime on this account makes a whole lot of sense. I think that this is not something worth the conversation of that.
Well, and I will add to this. I have personal experience in situations like the Berkshire Hathaway suit. We can be certain they are not going to stop their efforts. Right? Their lawyers are working almost like on a contingency basis, and they will continue to appeal their assessment.
Let's vote on the motion.
Yep. All right. So we're on the amended motion of cutting 5,000. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Opposed. All right, fails. Back to the original motion. Any other thoughts, comments on the original motion? All right, all those in favor of the original motion of accepting in Department 160 professional services at the level of the Board of Selectmen proposal, $264,830, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed?
Nay.
Cool. Next, Department 170 probate office. I'll make a motion to accept the Board of Selectmen's proposal, total department amount $5,793.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, Department 180, building inspection. I'll make a motion to accept the Board of Selectmen proposal, department total amount $280,294.
Second.
Discussion.
I have to abstain from this one. It wouldn't look appropriate for me to I'll abstain.
For the rest of the board, any questions? Don't see it. Okay. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, we have, it looks like 6 yes and 1 abstention. Next department. Department 190, data processing. I'll make a motion to accept the Board of Selectmen's proposal in a departmental total of $323,104.
Second.
Discussion. Not seeing any. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, I think, I couldn't tell. Nick, were you yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, so you got it. Dion, 6 yes, and Cynthia, no. Next, Department 200. I'll make a proposal that we accept the departmental total as proposed by the Board of Selectmen in the amount of $89,089.
Second.
Second.
Discussion. Brian,
Bob, was there any good news on any of like the property and liability? Or when do we bid our liability insurance and stuff like that? I see we went up.
This is social services.
Yeah, we're not there yet.
I thought
Brian.
we were on town insurance. I thought we approved social services. All right, my
No.
fault. No, that's
No,
fine.
not yet.
that's,
All right.
that's an indication we're all getting tired. Maybe just a couple more. I've got about 850. Let's see if we can maybe clear through a couple more. Any questions on Department 200 Social Services, Board of Selectmen proposal, $89,089?
No.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, next. Town insurance, next.
Brian, did you?
Yeah,
I do have a question on this one.
give me a second. Department 210, Town Insurance. I'll make a motion to accept the Board of Selectmen's proposal, department total $1,439,400.
Second.
Brian,
Bob, did we get any good news on the is this a guess on liability insurance? Because
No. Perma is our insurance carrier. It's a pool. And our lap increase is 2.4%. They gave me a statement on that, and the workers' comp is down 3.8%. So those are actual numbers. Those aren't the only numbers that are included in there. There's other insurances that we have throughout the year. We got, just for instance, bonding for the town clerk, tax collector, things like that. But there's a number of different insurances that we do have in addition to the lap and the workers' comp.
do we self-insure anything or no?
No.
Everything's through company.
Yep.
Okay.
any other questions? No, it doesn't want, Cynthia.
Yeah, just Bob K. Are those are those premium payment increases, or is there more insurance that you've had to get?
No, there's an additional policy that we are getting right now because of COVID. We have a registered nurse that's going out to homebound patients, so to speak, residents, and that's going to be $300. So we have to take out that policy, but for the most part, those are other current policies that we have in place, except for something small like that during the course of the year. Those
Okay, so
things do
is
pop
that
up.
like a rider, or is it like a whole separate insurance?
No,
I'm
it's a
just
separate
curious.
policy that we have. The one today that because there's about 20 patients or residents that was taken out with the travelers, or the application went into travelers today.
Okay, thanks.
So I have a question, Bob. You mentioned when you presented this that we get rebates because of safety compliance.
Mhm.
When do those come out and what's the scale of those?
Well, they come in probably late June, early July timeframe. We do budget for that in the revenue. Last year we budgeted similar to the prior year, $70,000, and we only got $38,000 in, or 36. So this year we budgeted for $36,000. We may be surprised if the pool was successful. They have it's like a dividend if they have not excess funds, but a fund balance, a positive fund balance. They may give us more money in the current year. So, but we won't find that out until just about the start of the fiscal year.
Let me add some additional information to that. The lower rate we got on workers' comp is because of the work we're doing on risk management. The rebate has to do with the financial performance of KERMA, because it's a member-owned nonprofit. So if they do well financially, they give part of that back to their members, but we won't know what that is until many months away.
Thank you. That's good information. Thanks, Matt.
Mhm.
Any more questions among the Board of Finance? Not seeing any. We'll vote all those in favor of the motion to accept the Board of Selectmen's proposal for Department 210 Town Insurance in a total amount of $1,439,400. Please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? I think it's 6 and then Cynthia with,
I didn't, no, I voted yes. I didn't have my hand up in time.
oh, okay, thank you. I'm sorry. Dion, you got that?
Yep.
You good?
Yeah.
All right, next, Department 220, Fleet Maintenance. I'll make a motion to accept the Board of Selectmen's proposal for Department 220 Fleet Maintenance in a total amount of $355,938.
Second,
Discussion.
Bob, just one, Bob K, 101 Fleet Manager. There's a $10,000 difference. Is that someone's pay or something? What is that? For one employee, two employees?
Two employees. That's the two, the chief mechanic and the assistant.
And they're union contract, union employees.
Not the chief mechanic. He's classified. But
Okay.
we gotta remember there's an increase in here for the raise that he got back in July.
Yep.
So,
Okay.
yeah,
They're both union, Bob.
they're both union. Okay. All right,
Good.
I stand corrected.
Cynthia, I think you had your hand up first.
Who, me?
Yeah, did you?
Yeah, no, actually Nick asked my question, so.
Brian, sorry. I think Brian, you're up now.
Bob, what have we historically spent on the maintenance for highway?
Brad can pull that up. He's got the Munis program open.
Give me 1 second. while I
Aren't we
pull-
on fleet maintenance?
Yes.
That's what I just said.
Oh, I thought you said highway.
It's the highway.
It's maintenance highway. It's a line
The
under. it.
highway trucks.
So
I'm not
Brian,
looking at that.
the last fiscal year 2020, we spent 116. 2019, we spent 109. 2018, we spent 121. And we're
All right.
at
Yeah,
79.
we're good.
Any more questions? All right, we'll vote on the motion. All those in favor of accepting the Board of Selectmen's proposal for Department 220 Fleet Maintenance and a total amount of $355,938, please signify by saying aye.
All right.
Brian, I'm sorry, I just couldn't see. Brian, were you a yes on that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Bob, can I ask a question? Because it's late and I'm confused. Did we already capture the $30,000 that Bob told us about, or is that coming in an upcoming account?
It's coming in 390.
In benefit.
That employee benefits, right?
That's employee benefits, yeah.
All right, thanks.
Okay, and we'll just do just a couple more, I think. We're getting to 9 o'clock. All right, Public Works, Department 230. Make a motion to accept the Board of Selectmen's proposal, department total $361,999.
second,
Discussion.
Just 101 again, it's 15,000. How many employees is that, Bob K. or Brad? I'm sorry, I should have said Brad first.
So that's the highway superintendent, that's the public works director, that's the engineer, and half of the salary of the admin. Part of that big jump is when we were finally able to hire a new public works director, the salary was $10,000 more than what had been budgeted the previous year.
So that's 3.5 employees. And then all the highway guys are coming up in the next budget, in the next one, right? I think.
Yes. Everyone but the superintendent.
Yes. Thank you, Brett and Bob.
Brian,
Just so I'm correct, it's the public works director. That's
Yeah.
one of the salaries.
Correct.
The engineer, he's split. Isn't the public works director an engineer too? Didn't we hire one who's an engineer?
Yes, there's also
So-
another employee in the office that's an engineer,
Part-time or full-time?
full-time.
Is that shared with public utilities?
No, she's not a PE. I do believe she is an engineer though, correct?
Oh, okay, so that's like his, okay, I know who you're talking about now. And the other one is Bob Dibble. Does he make up the three? Is that the third employee?
Yeah, so it's Bob Dibble, who's the highway superintendent, the public works director, the engineer, and half of the admin gets charged here. The other half goes to water and sewer.
All right, so for the director of the sewer department, he's no longer sharing the responsibilities in public works, so his salary is no longer shown in here.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
okay. Any other questions? Not seeing any. All those in favor of the motion to accept the Board of Selectmen's proposal for Department 240 Highway Department in the department total amount of $1,938,272, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Bob, I
I'm
thought we-
sorry, was
Public Works.
Cynthia opposed or did she?
Oh,
Or no?
Aye.
Okay,
You
So
just
that was
voted on the
all.
Highway Department?
Bob, you just read the total for the highway department 240. I don't think you voted on 230 yet.
sorry. Yep, that's a
Yep.
brain cramp. Another reason to maybe stop soon. All right, I want to amend that motion to make it correct. Right, so all those in favor of the Public Works Board of Selectmen proposal, department total $361,999. Please signify by saying aye.
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 All right, it's 9 o'clock. What do folks think about adjourning where we are?
Move to adjourn.
Second,
Second.
all those in favor, please signify by saying
Can
aye.
we talk after this?
Aye.
And we will have our next meeting Thursday, beginning at 7 p.m.
now,
Rob jumped on that motion in a hurry.
I don't know if y'all want to discuss it or not. I have the agenda ready to turn in, but I have not turned it in yet. If you want to meet at 6:30 instead of 7, we could, or if you want to keep it at 7, we can keep it at 7.
I like
I'd be-
6:30.
6:30,
Good with me. 6:30 is fine.
6:30.
Nick, did you
Just-
have, were you
I think 6:30 is a good idea. Yeah.
6:30? Excellent.
Okay,
So we'll
So-
convene 6:30 on Thursday, the 4th.
okay, that's what we'll do.
Good deal. Board of
Thank you.
Finance members, thank you very much for gutting it out. Really appreciate it. I think we got a lot of ground covered. We still have a lot of ground to cover, but thank you very much. All right, have a good night, and we'll see you all Thursday.
Thanks,
Good night.
everyone.
Right.
Night.